Somewhere inside a deep forest, a boy that seems to be running away from something pauses for a moment to take a breather. His stature was on the cute side, but once he opened his mouth, there wasn't anything cute about it. He cursed under his breath as he frowned, swearing that he would make the princess cry and make her squeal on her own bed. There wasn't any context about it, but I guess we will initially find out. Just as he ranted, his shoulders slumped as if he was tired of it all, not knowing the danger lurking behind him. He dejectedly stated that he was so hungry and that his feet were hurting. He was actually trying to find the city. After that, he finally noticed that there was something behind him. It was a bunch of grotesque goblins. Seeing the group of goblins right in front of him, he could not help screaming in fear. He immediately ran away from them as he wondered where they came from. However, he was stopped in his tracks after bumping into something. It was another group of goblins. He dropped on the floor with his butt and started cursing the princess as if she was the one to blame for why he was in that situation. The goblin did not waste any time and immediately feasted on him. One goblin started with his arm and tore his skin. He screamed in pain and begged them to let him go as it could understand human language. He tried to run away again as he stopped the bleeding gushing out in his arm. But it was no use. A goblin still caught him by grabbing his leg. As the goblins approached him, tears started falling out of his eyes out of fear, knowing that he might die. He tried to rationalize that goblins were not that much different from them. So if this was a game, it would be easy to take down a monster. However, the reality was different from that. With this many goblins hoarding over him, he was torn from all sides in no time. Even as he screamed in terror and pain, the goblins did not stop and no one could hear him, inside this deep forest. As he continued to scream, fearing that he might die, the goblins feasted on him, as they went deeper in his innards, as if he was the most delicious meal in the world. In this hopeless situation, with no help to cry, he whispered over and over as if he was chanting some spell that he didn't want to die, and that he wanted to go back to Japan. As his life disappeared, he still continued to ask for help with his little voice that was fading away, knowing that even as he did so, no one was there to hear him. A few hours earlier, a scream echoed in the middle of nowhere. Different faces of students could be seen shocked seeing their building was in an entirely different location. It was a completely unexpected and weird phenomenon. The boy from earlier was the first to speak. He was so shocked seeing the entire third floor of their school building, along with all the second graders and the teachers in a completely different location. He then summarized his situation in one sentence. He woke up to a girl screaming and apparently, the whole school building just moved to a different location. Looking outside, and seeing people with spears on their hands and a few people on horses, he didn't really know where the fudge they were, but he was sure that they weren't in Japan. After that, a chubby-looking Yankee went to one who seemed to be a soldier and began yapping and cursing, asking them what was going on. Another student tried to stop him, but it was no use, and his name was Funyama. We got to know the name of a side character first before the main character. Anyway, a woman suddenly interrupted the guy who was angrily yelling at one of his soldiers and stated that she was the one that summoned them in that world and introduced herself as the third princess of Riesenberg. Camilla Riesenberg, the boy who was cursing the princess earlier before he died, reacted positively at first when he first heard that there was a princess. Funyama then turned to Princess Camilla and complained that they should show more hospitality towards them, assuming that they were summoned under the pretext for them to be heroes. Funyama made sure that he was loud and clear and moved closer towards the princess, saying that if she wanted to make it in the night, they should be happy to give them some hospitality. However, the princess could not care less and explained that the reason they were only summoned was to fill the shortage of soldiers to increase their strength. She then arrogantly gave them two choices. They could either obey them, take credit, and go home with their reward, or they could just go ahead and die in their hands. She made sure that her message was conveyed properly with her eyes and added to choose wisely. Hearing that, the boy cursed at Funyama for messing with the princess. However, Funyama did not stop his antics and tried to impose more, but one of the soldiers caught his arm and bent it behind him. Funyama tried to force his way out, but he could not do anything. Princess Camilla then told him not to make her repeat the same thing over and over again. He should just choose, obey or die. After that, the soldier holding Funyama kicked him away to the point that he became a stickman in the frame. Different from Funyama's aggressive approach, one of the students politely asked the princess if she could ask her something. When the princess allowed it, the cute girl thanked Princess Camilla for allowing her and questioned if they could really get a reward and go home if they did the right thing as the princess mentioned before. Turns out that the cutie was the class president of RMC's class. Her name was Tadaka Asakawa. They complimented her for remaining calm, even in the situation they were in while posing together like that from a certain meme. The princess did not answer clearly and just said that if they performed their summoning spells, there might be monsters left to deal with, and explained that a summoning spell is not possible without a repatriation spell, which is the basis of all summoning magic. Hearing that, it seems that it was really possible for them to get home, so they were happy. After that, the princess stated that they were now going to assess their magic skills. Their magic skills then were assessed one by one. Meganekun then started explaining the mechanics of how they were assessed based on his observation. He called who seemed to be our Makakabun, then explained that if they touch the crystal ball, it emits a light that corresponds to the person's attributes, and the strength of the light indicates the amount of magical power. Kakabun then complimented Yagi, our Meganekun, that he was very observant. Yagi did not deny that he simply gave a reason that he was more observant than most people because he is a journalist. However, Kakabu didn't really know what he was talking about. Kakabun then asked Yagi what were the bracelets that everyone else was wearing after their assessments, and Yagi explained that it was what kept the magic from going haywire. Kakabu then assumed that it was a runaway magic, and thought that it sounded cool, like destroying everything in one's path. Yagi, who heard that, started teasing him by saying that there was no such thing as magic when they were clearly summoned using it. Just then, they heard someone yelling about their eyes or something, and it turned out that they were being blinded by the light emitted by the crystal ball touched by their president. Princess Camilla assessed while looking at the crystal ball that Asakawa had a lot of magic, and it was even attributed to light. She complimented her that, unlike the summoning of the young heroes, she did not think that it would hold much promise, but it seemed like she found something that worked for her. Because of that, the princess did not hesitate and let her in her carriage. The next one was Takayama, the hot guy in their class, surrounded by many girls. Takayama got a fire attribute and commented that it was a strong one while still upholding his handsomeness, which resulted in Kakabun looking at him with such hatred, jealous of how popular he was. He complained in his mind that he should have kept his head down like the rest of them. He was a basketball player after all. Next to the line was Funyama. He excitedly approached the crystal ball and smirked, confident that he would get a good one. Unfortunately, nothing crazy happened. His attribute was Amber Earth, which caused the tester to call him a weakling, while the princess adding to the wound, saying that it was a shame. Funyama then was dragged away as he tried to get another chance, saying that there must be something wrong with it, but the princess was resolute and said that no matter how many times he tried, nothing would change. The next one was finally Kakabun, with the princess pointing at him. Kakabun's face blushed in excitement now that it was his turn to know what kind of magical power he possessed. However, he really just had to pose like a cringe weeb while thinking that it cannot be helped. He'll show them his cheap magic. He then made a huge statement, like a middle school with a hero complex. He confidently said word by word, "Crystal of the Devil's Eye, use my magic to tint the darkness of the abyss." The audience around them expected something big to happen, but disappointingly, nothing happened, as in, literally nothing happened. The Crystal of the Devil's Eye did not even react in the slightest. It was freaking embarrassing. I can feel it through the screen. I can feel the secondhand embarrassment deep in my skin. Seeing the result, the tester called him a total flop, so Kakabun tried to protest as to what happened. The tester then gave him another crystal ball and told him to touch it, which was much smaller than the regular crystal ball. Kakabun looked at the small crystal ball and wondered if it was one of those things that shatter if you touch it. However, when he finally touched the crystal ball, nothing happened again. The testers who saw what happened commented that it was a complete mess, but it does happen sometimes, but they did not realize that the occasional summon could be one of them. Funyama, who was behind Kakabun, started laughing hearing what the testers said and commented that Kakabun was a no-show. Hearing Funyama laughing at him really pissed him off, but he really could not say it out loud. The soldier then asked Princess Camilla what they were going to do, now that the situation was like that. Princess Camilla looked at Kakabun and told him that he was free to go wherever he wanted while posing like a model hugging her huge bazonkaz. However, Kakabun couldn't care less how she looked at him and was even happy about it as he shuddered at the thought. However, their president, Asakawa, asked the princess that they couldn't abandon Kakabun because they were one of them. So if it was okay, she asked her if Kakabun could at least go back to their original world. The princess then explained that if they put a repatriation spell on him, the rest of them would not be able to go back home. Because of that, Asakawa asked the princess if that was the case, she should let Kakabun stay with them until everyone returned to their original world. The princess then resolutely refused and said to not make her repeat herself again because she does not need useless people. However, Asakawa said that it was horrible to be summoned unilaterally and then just be thrown away just because he doesn't have any magic. The princess went silent after hearing that and told Kakabun that she would give him one last chance to see what they were all about. She ordered him to go the other way through the wilderness, through the woods, and beyond that is a city. She said that he shall report to the barracks in that city where she would get him assigned. End of the flashback. Kakabun finally remembered how he ended up wandering alone in the woods, and now was getting eaten alive by goblins as he died slowly and painfully. As the painful torture of getting eaten continued, his final words were that he didn't want to die, but his vision blurred as if he was really dying. The last thing that happened was something appeared out of nowhere and cut up all the goblins. In his last drop of consciousness, the last thing he saw was skulls. He could not help but be hopeless as he thought that more powerful demons would appear. It was choking him. Just then, the sunrise approached and the birds tweeted. Unexpectedly, Kakabun woke up, after thinking that he died. Looking around, with all the skeleton soldiers surrounding him, he could only think of one thing. One of the skeleton soldiers then walked towards him and said that he would answer his question. Kakabun then asked the skeleton soldier if he wanted to hear it now, and the skeleton soldier politely said yes, while calling him his lord. Kakabun then realized that they were talking telepathically. Kakabun then asked them if he looked like a lord. The skeleton soldiers then answered that they had obeyed the orders of their lord to protect him, their lord. Kakabun continued to ask questions that he was curious about as to what was happening right now. He asked them if they were saying that he was the one that was calling them. The skeleton soldier up front answered affirmatively and introduced himself as Reinhardt. He explained that they were knights who had sworn allegiance to their lord, but they were ambushed and lost their lives, and due to their regrets of not being able to protect their lord, they were unable to pass on to the afterlife. But Kakabun was still confused and doubted if he was the one who really called out for them or summoned them, because he never used magic before. He explained that yesterday he was even called a total flop by the testers. Reinhardt then replied while calling him Kent-sama that if that was the case, then he must have been an exceptional necromancer for summoning them unaware. Hearing that from Reinhardt, he wondered if it was because of necromancy that the Crystal of the Devil's Eye did not shine due to his darkness attribute. However, Reinhardt explained that should not have been the case, because if one had necromantic qualities like him, what he called the Crystal of the Devil's Eye should have been dyed black. Just then, another soldier spoke as it raised its skeleton hand, as it said that it had something to say. Kakabun or Kent-sama asked the skeleton that raised its hand as to what it was, and the skeleton introduced himself as Baston, the commander of the unit. Kakabun could not help but feel troubled because it was hard to tell who's who, because they're practically just bones. Baston then shared his theory that Kakabun might have both light and dark magical attributes. He suspects that they cancelled each other, and the crystal of the devil's eye did not react. Hearing that, Kakabun could not help but agree that it might indeed be like that. The skeletons look so cute in this panel, I want to eat them like cookies. Kakabun then put his hand on his stomach and analyzed that it might really be what Baston said because the goblins tore him apart from limb to limb, with his internal organs pulled out, but after one night he was back to being all lively again. Reinhardt then shared that as far as he can see, it did not react because both of his attributes are equally balanced. Kakabun then asked Reinhardt, if both attributes are not balanced with exactly the same strength, does that mean that he could get a reaction in each one? Reinhardt then explained that it was either they were exactly the same and balanced, or they did not react because of unexpected attributes. In any case, the only certain thing is that even the crystal of the devil's eye could not measure him properly. Well, by surprise, he summoned 10 skeletons at the same time, and healing wounds where internal organs are popping out. So these really are some over-specs attributes he has obtained. After that, Kakabun, who now knows that he has high-specs attributes, tells the skeletons that now that they are here, he can easily go through the forest. However, the skeletons did not move an inch. Seeing that, Kakabun stopped in his tracks and asked them what was wrong. All of them hung their heads low and one was even facepalming, even though he had no face. Reinhardt then explained that there were ogres and gigawolves that would soon roam this area, so they would not be able to protect Kakabun with their current strength. Kakabun could not help but agree, seeing that everyone was already tattered and dead. However, Reinhardt explained that they can be strengthened by taking in the magic stones of other demons. He politely asked their Kent-sama to choose 3 of them and use the magic stones from the rest of them and the goblins to strengthen the 3 that he would choose. Kakabun then panicked and asked if that was really okay, and immediately asked what would happen to those who had their magic stone taken, even though he already knew what would probably happen. So he declared to them that he wouldn't allow any of them to disappear forever because of him. Reinhardt raised his fist in the air and said they would not disappear forever. It would just mean that they would return to how it should have been and ascend to heaven. Reinhardt politely requested Kakabun that it would be nice if he could send them away to the afterlife with his own hands. But Kakabun thought it would be better if they were to go all together. So Reinhardt warmly said that they, who would stay behind, will take over the will of the deceased and protect him as their lord. It would be an honor for them. Hearing that, Kakabun was enlightened at the thought and chose the squad commander Reinhardt, the unit commander Baston, and Fred, who is also the unit commander. As for the rest of the group, they have decided to send them to heaven. As they got ready to send them away, Kakabun cried and thanked them for helping him, even now that they had to go. One of the skeleton soldiers then tapped his left shoulder and told him not to cry, because he was the reason that they were now able to pass on to the afterlife. The others also agreed, saying that if it had not been for him, they would still be wandering around indefinitely. Feeling the warmth and comfort of each of these skeleton soldiers, Kakabun watches them warmly as if he could see their real faces, while continuing that they were pretty sure that their family members and friends were waiting for them on the other side, so they asked of him to send them with a smile on his face. However, Kakabun couldn't do it. Instead, he thanked them and told them to rest in peace. He watched them slowly disappear and ascend to heaven. Once their soul was high in the sky, they thanked Kakabun again for his help, and told their commander to take care of Kakabun for them, and they did not hesitate to say that they would. After the soldiers were gone, their magic stones were left behind for Kakabun to use to strengthen the 3 skeleton soldiers as discussed earlier. Kakabun then picked it up from the ground, and then looked at the goblins that were piled up by the skeleton soldier earlier. Reinhardt then said that there were also magic stones recovered from yesterday's goblins. All of it was 18 in total, so that would make it 6 for each of them. After that, Kakabun asked Reinhardt how they take in magic stones, so Reinhardt explained that some monsters eat it, but in their case, they push it in their chest to absorb it. With that said, he asked Kakabun for necromantic assistance. However, Kakabun tried to refuse because he only used it unconsciously, so he didn't know what to do. But Reinhardt said that it would be okay. All he had to do was to imagine stronger skeletons. Kakabun tried to do it, creating some mental image in his head. The 3 stood there as they waited for Kakabun to help them. Once Kakabun decided to help them, he told the 3 to start taking in magic stones, and they did. He imagined Reinhardt as heavy, hard, and shiny tungsten, Baston as strong titanium, and Fred as hard and agile like complex carbon fibers. Soon after that, a wave of magic passes Reinhardt, Baston, and Fred, and slowly, as a torrent of magic fades, Kakabun could not believe what he was seeing. A newly born skeleton that looked much scarier than before appeared. Compared to his previous form, the 3 look much more vicious now than before. Looking at them, Kakabun confessed that if he met them at night like this, he was pretty sure that he would be scared. Even so, Kakabun thought that they looked so different than before. He strengthened them. In terms of shape, they went from being a normal character to an SSR level character. Just then, they heard a noise coming behind Kakabun. It was the goblins eating their dead kind. Kakabun looked at the goblin corpses and thought that it might be because of that they attracted monsters, and Reinhardt replied that may indeed be the case. Kakabun looked at the monster that was also eating the goblins and realized that they were ogres. Seeing this, they took the opportunity to test their newly found strength, so they requested from their lord, Kakabun, to order them to subdue them, and to look forward to how powerful they have become. Kakabun then ordered them to attack. Once that happens, the 3 immediately move forward, and the ogre immediately notices them. Reinhardt then looked at Kakabun first, then smirked with a thumbs up as if nothing bad would happen. However, this only looked weird to Kakabun, and wondered why Reinhardt seemed like he was having fun about this. He didn't really see the appeal. After that, the ogre began attacking Reinhardt, but was stopped by his skeleton hands. The two both pushed and pulled as they groaned together. In the end, Reinhardt broke its arm, and the ogre screamed in pain. Having its hand broken, Reinhardt did not miss the beat to take out his weapon and slice the ogre in half. Baston and Fred also easily killed the other ogres and goblins. It was both fierce and vicious. After that, the three vicious skeleton commanders laughed together, loving the fact that they now had a wonderful and powerful body. Kakabun wondered if Reinhardt's character changed too much, but just dismissed it because it seemed that the other two were also like that as they got much stronger than before. After that, they kneeled in front of Kakabun and said that they were eternally grateful for giving them such an amazing body and superior weapons, then added that Kakabun could wield their blades as he liked. Kakabun, shy at the sudden formality, stated that he was still an unreliable lord, but he appreciated it. Reinhardt then asked Kakabun to name their weapons for them, so Kakabun did for them. He named Reinhardt's sword Graham, Baston's spear Jayborg, and Fred's twin swords as Levitine and Durenslave. Once Kakabun named their weapons, the three of them laughed happily, even though they looked like maniacs. After that, Reinhardt asked Kakabun why he wanted to go to Valzard since it was basically suicide to go through the demon forest alone. It was, of course, Kakabun's first time hearing it since he was from another world, so just hearing the name of the forest made him shiver. Kakabun replied asking Reinhardt if he intended to dispose of all the demons they might face in the forest, and Reinhardt answered that the demon forest is a dangerous forest that one cannot cross without a group of escorts, so there is no helping it. Hearing that, Kakabun realized that the princess just sent him there to die and could not help but curse at the princess, calling her an ill-mannered, stupid princess. Kakabun then continued that they were summoned as soldiers and wondered if the princess was going to war somewhere. Reinhardt also wondered why his master was summoned near the center of the kingdom and not near the borders. He added that it was common sense to gather troops near the border when fighting another country. Kakabun then explained that it would be a bother to call more than 200 people to a place far from the battlefield. Hearing that from his master, Reinhardt made an assumption that if that was the case, then she was probably trying to seize the throne for herself. Kakabun believed that it might really be for a coup d'etat. He continued that the ill-mannered princess indeed has a strong desire for power. Kakabun then wondered if that would mean they were being involved in a power struggle over the throne, and Reinhardt answered that it might really be the case. Just as Kakabun was left in his thoughts, Baston called for them and informed him that there was an abandoned carriage down the road. All of them then walked towards the carriage and saw a bunch of stuff. Seeing that it was wrecked, Kakabun asked Reinhardt if it was attacked by a monster, and Reinhardt answered that it was normal to think so. Reinhardt then told his master that they could procure clothes from the cargo, adding that the cargo would continue to decay until another carriage came by, so it would be best for them to make use of it. Looking at his ripped shirt, Kakabun agreed with Reinhardt, commenting that it would be suspicious if he went out looking like that. Kakabun looked for clothes for him to wear while the others were also busy at the back, but all he could find were girl clothes. More than that, all of them were so big, but fortunately, he quickly found one that was suitable for him. Just then, Kakabun noticed something on the cargo floor, and as he looked at it, Reinhardt noticed him and started to explain what it was. Reinhardt said that it was an enslavement bracelet, meaning there were either slaves or criminals in that carriage. Hearing that, Kakabun was surprised, so Reinhardt wondered and asked his master if he did not know about the enslavement bracelets. Kakabun explained that he had seen it before, but all he knew was that it was used to suppress the leakage of magic power. However, Reinhardt corrected and made it clear that it was for making a person obedient. Hearing that, Kakabun was filled with rage. Now, he knows why the princess told them to put the bracelet after the judgment. Reinhardt said that all of them were being deceived. Kakabun did not know what to do now. If he could, he would like to see a way to help everyone if he was given an opportunity, but he doubts that he can actually do that. Reinhardt finally understood why his master was feeling uneasy, but he told him that he shouldn't be so pessimistic. Kakabun couldn't do that without him being able to wander free while his classmates were being held as slaves under a crazy princess. Reinhardt tried to ease his master's worries by saying that there was a reason that the princess summoned them, so it was less likely that she would harm them before that purpose was fulfilled. However, Kakabun still had some doubts. He was worried that she was going to dispose of them before that. After all, he was also disposed of. Reinhardt then bluntly told his master that the princess likely disposed of him because she probably thought that he was a total flop. Kakabun smiled at the realization that since everyone was useful, he did not have to worry about them, unlike him who was seen as a total flop. Just as the words that came from his registered in his head, the smile his face was wearing completely vanished and sweat started coming down from his eyes, or so he said. To comfort him, Reinhardt told Kakabun that he didn't have to worry because no one would be able to find a magician comparable to him, even if they searched all over the kingdom or the whole continent. Because of that, Kakabun immediately recovered and had his eyes sparkling. Once his confidence was built, Kakabun picked up the enslavement bracelet and tore it apart while declaring that he would remove that from everyone's wrist. However, it causes worries to the three. Kakabun noticed their expression and immediately asked what was wrong. This time Baston answered that if he removed it by an illegal procedure, it would not come off easily. He continued to explain to his master that using either a light attribute or a dark attribute would be useless for that. But on a different note, he had heard that dark magicians can hide familiars in their shadows or use shadows to summon them from a distance. Kakabun then asked them if it was really possible to do that with darkness magic, and added that if that was the case he'd probably store the money he took from that carriage, but he didn't know how. So he asked Reinhardt how he could do it, and he answered and said that if Kakabun was using magic by imagining it, he told them to just do it that way. Kakabun then said that if he doesn't know, he can just try, just as he has always done. Finally, Kakabun was able to change clothes. He tried what he could right away. It was so amazing that Kakabun almost felt like it was a cheat. He was able to summon everyone from the shadow, It is also possible to move in the shadows. Not only that, he discovered that he, himself, could lurk around inside the shadows. He could move around in the shadows too, and he was able to store his precious luggage in the shadow space. On the way to Valzard, the three skeletons continued to strengthen themselves. For being just a skeleton, these three are too much on a cheat level. On the fourth day after starting to walk in the forest, they finally arrived. Kakabun looked near the cliff to look at Valzard and thought that if he moved in the shadows, it would be easy to go in. But it sounds like trouble. Just as he said that, Reinhardt said that, if his master doesn't have proper permission, it will be troublesome if they encounter any trouble later, and Kakabun agreed. However, Kakabun also wondered if he could officially enter from the front, so he thought that since he had come out from that forest, he thought that it was better to act as if he ran away for his life. Soon after he said that Kakabun made sure that he looked exhausted and looked like he would faint at any moment as he staggered his way toward the gate. A guard then noticed him from above and shouted asking Kakabun if he was okay, and said that they would come there soon. After that, the gate opened, and a man saw him faint, worried if he was okay. So he lifted him up from the ground and told Kakabun that he didn't have to worry because he was going to be fine. Kakabun, who successfully infiltrated, could not help but feel bad for deceiving them by seeing them so kind. Later, Kakabun woke up inside an unfamiliar room, and as he looked around, a man greeted him with a stern smile. The man commented that Kakabun had the complexion of a corpse yesterday, but he was relieved to see that he was feeling better. Kakabun then asked where he was, and because of that the man wondered if Kakabun was still half asleep, but he still told Kakabun where he was. He said that they were in Garrison Station in the fortified city of Valzard. The man continued to smile kindly at Kakabun. He told him that it was okay, and complimented him that he had survived well and arrived there. He really can't tell the truth of what really happened to him inside the forest, so he could only thank the man. And as he saw it, he was getting tired of living a life that was too different than before. It seems that he had fallen asleep really deeply. The man continued that it was a pity that Kakabun lost his companions, but it was not his responsibility, and he doesn't have to feel guilty about surviving alone. Kakabun just thanked him again. After that, the man introduces himself as the head of the 3rd Garrison Order, Karatsuda, while Kakabun introduces himself as Kent. Karatsuda then asked Kakabun what he does for a living, so he answered just like he, Reinhardt, and the others thought about the scenario he was going to tell if he was ever asked. He said that he was in a caravan from the west as an apprentice to a healer. Karatsuda then said that he had a lot of experience, but at this age, it was amazing to be a healer apprentice. Hearing another praise from Karatsuda, Kakabun immediately said that even though he was an apprentice, he just usually did chores for his master, and had not done any actual treatment yet. But the truth is that he could even heal an extreme injury caused by goblins. Well, he can't really say that. After that, Kakabun told Karatsuda that he would like an ID card so that he could start earning money to live his life. Hearing that, Karatsuda willingly offered that he would take him to the guild's office. He asked Kakabun if he was in good shape, and he would take him there now, so Kakabun agreed. Inside the city of Valzard, Karatsuda and Kakabun, who had their eyes sparkling, were walking together towards the guild office. The reason why Kakabun's eyes were sparkling was because every person he sees has unique features. Their hair color was either light blue or light greenish pink. There are also people who look like beasts, which hit Kakabun every time that he is in a different world. Kakabun then complimented the city for being wide, so Karatsuda explained that the wall at the end is the wall of the old town, so there are at least 3 times as many as that up to the edge of the new town. This amazed Kakabun even more after learning that it was much wider than he thought. Curious, Kakabun asked Karatsuda if the roads were maintained by using magic, and Karatsuda answered that he was correct, because if it was not maintained by magic, it would not look so beautiful. He then added that the guild they were about to go to had a sign where sword and hammer intersect. Once they were inside, Kakabun asked Karatsuda if the guild was for rough adventurers and talented craftsmen. Karatsuda answered that Kakabun was correct, and told him not to worry because they would have simpler jobs for him to take. This Q and it will be the end of me, seriously. After arriving at the reception, Kakabun told the receptionist that he wanted to register as Kento. The receptionist then told Kakabun to put his hand on it. Kakabun looked at the thing that the receptionist pulled out. It was the crystal of the devil's eye that gave him the trauma of being a total flop. Looking at the flustered expression on Kakabun's face, the receptionist thought that Kakabun probably didn't know what it was, so he explained that it was a magic tool to look at his attributes and magical power. Kakabun could not do anything, and just closed his eyes, because he had to go through this thing again. He hoped that as he reached for the crystal of the devil's eye, the time he used his magic in the demon forest would cause a change in the result in the judgment of this crystal of the devil's eye, however. Once his hand was on the crystal of the devil's eye and opened his eye, nothing happened just like the first time. The receptionist found it unusual that the crystal of the devil's eye did not emit any light and told Kakabun that he was in F rank. Kakabun could not help but cry and accept the reality. After receiving the ID, Kakabun asked the receptionist what an F rank was, so the old receptionist simply explained that it was the lowest rank, and since he couldn't use magic if he entered the demon forest he'd die. The receptionist then continued and said that he was not degrading him, because no matter how strong he is, if he doesn't have a track record, he can only give an E rank. Hearing that, Karatsuda told the receptionist that Kakabun was actually someone who survived the demon forest, which the receptionist did not expect and was surprised when he heard. He was so surprised that he started questioning Kakabun how someone like him was able to survive out there when he couldn't even use magic and without any escorts at that. However, the truth is that he does have escorts, as many as 3 vicious skeletons. Just then a cat-like woman approached them. It was a woman with a huge lovable heart. She asked Kakabun with a smile on her face if he was a rookie, which excited Kakabun very much since there wasn't a cat-eared person in their world. However, their interaction was short because another cat-eared person appeared. This time it was a male. He was mad that Kakabun was staring at her. Even though it was the girl that approached him first, Kakabun could not help but be sad as he apologized. Fortunately, the girl who introduced herself as Mule stopped the boy, and she called Jillik to menace him even more. Kakabun introduced himself as Kento. Mule then asked him if he was from the north since his hair was black. Kakabun sticks to the story they created and answers that he has always been with a group of merchants from the west, but they were attacked by the monsters in the demon forest. Mule then asked Kakabun if he was okay, to which Kakabun was about to answer that he was fine, but he was cut off by a big hurdle. Being in between them, Mule comforts him by saying that he did his best. However, the comfort really comes from Mule's big lovable heart. Seeing these things unfold before him, Jillik is filled with anger, so before Kakabun loses air, Jillik yanks him away from Mule's big lovable heart. He cursed at Kakabun, telling him to get away from his Mu Ain or his Mu big sister. Jillik raised Kakabun in the air, holding him in his collar angrily, while Kakabun just sighed in relief that he was able to breathe again. Seeing his brother like that, Mule told Jillik to stop, but Jillik refuted that she was the one who actually put Kakabun's life in danger. Hearing that, Mule cutely apologized and moved on. After that, Mule asked Kakabun if he was going to pick work at the farm since he was registered as an F rank. She added that it was a good choice for him. Jillik agreed with his big sister and said that it suits a little kid like Kakabun. Just then, Karatsuda asked Kakabun if the farm was okay for him to be his first job, and Kakabun answered that if it was just picking work, then he could do it. Hearing that, Karatsuda said that it was settled. After that, Karatsuda asked the receptionist if there was a place Kakabun could stay. The old receptionist then opened a logbook and said that there was still a vacancy at Amanda's. The receptionist then looked at Kakabun and asked him if he had any money. However, Kakabun could not say that he had, because it was inside his shadow storage. It was not like he could just take it out now. If he did, they would become suspicious of him. In the end, the kind receptionist lent him 10,000 helts without interest. It was okay to borrow money, but he didn't know how much it was worth. If there isn't enough money for rent, then he's done for. Upon reaching Amanda's place, she welcomed them warmly. However, she mistakenly assumed they were diners looking for a meal, not realizing lunch had already wrapped up, so she suggested they return later in the evening. So Kakabun explained that they were not there for that. He explained that they were introduced to that place by the guild. She then asked them if it was for a member of the garrison, so Karatsuda explained that it wasn't. He said that he was hoping to get a room for Kakabun there. Karatsuda mentioned that Kakabun was the only one left from a caravan that got ambushed by monsters while passing through the demon forest. Hearing that, the madam hugged Kakabun and pressed him against her big heart. She sympathized with Kakabun's tragic story that they made up. Now, he almost died again. Kakabun gasped for air, seeing that the madam apologized, then asked if he had any money and what kind of job he had. Once he calmed down, Kakabun told the madam that he just borrowed from the guild, but he didn't have the skills to apply for a proper job. Fortunately, the madam was kind. The landlady told Kakabun that since the month has only a few more days left, she'll just add the rent to the next month. She told Kakabun that the monthly rent is 2,500 helts with meals. In the morning and evening, 500 helts are added. Kakabun thanked her and said that he would have the meals too. The kind madam smiled at him warmly and said to pay the rent every month. After the deal was done, Karatsuda decided to leave. He told Kakabun that he would be back, and that if anything happened, he told Kakabun to always come to him for help. Kakabun then thanked Karatsuda as they shook hands, saying that he really appreciated his kindness and everything he had done for him. Karatsuda then brushed it off that it was just his job, and told Kakabun to take care of himself as he walked out the door. Kakabun then told Karatsuda that he would, and that he would come back to report when he felt better. Just then, a cute little girl appeared. This cute girl asked the landlady who Kakabun was, so she introduced him to her as Kento and told the girl to say hi, calling in her name, Mesa. However, Mesa could not care less, saying that he was going to die anyway. Amanda then scolds her daughter, asking her what she was talking about, making Kakabun curious if the last person who stayed there before actually died. The landlady's face turned dark after that. She told Kakabun that he would understand it sooner or later. She continued that the boy who came to the inn before him went into the dungeon right away, and that was it. Kakabun thought about the dungeons, but he was cut off by the madam scolding him, that there are some, but it would be best for him not to go there because they do no good. Kakabun could not help but just say yes. After that, the landlady, Amanda, asked Mesa to show Kakabun his room, and Mesa proceeded to let him see the room, telling Kakabun to follow him. As they walked in the hallway, Kakabun asked Mesa if the dungeon was a dangerous place, and Mesa answered that if he wanted to die, then he should go. Dang, this girl is savage. After they arrived at Kakabun's room, Mesa told him to use it as he liked. Not even a minute had passed. Mesa already said goodbye and left the room. Kakabun then thanked Mesa for showing him the room as she left. He then started looking around and noticed that they only had the bare necessities for a place to stay, but it was all he needed anyway. Just then, he noticed something above the bed. It was a girl's underwear. As he took a look at it, Mesa came back, asking him what he was doing, which startled him. Soon after that, Kakabun was finally able to lie down on his bed. He then let out a sigh in frustration because there was so much going on that he was getting confused. The three skeletons then came out of the shadows and agreed with their master. They said that they were surprised as well. According to the information he received earlier, this is no longer the kingdom of Riesenberg, but the Republic of Landspurt. While they were wandering in the demon forest, the country was divided into two. They continued that if this is a different country, maybe the princess's aim is to usurp the throne. Because of that, Kakabun made an assumption that they might attack Valzard. Reinhardt answered that it was a possibility. After all, it used to be one country. Kakabun then asked Fred and Bastin how they saw the city. Bastin answered that it was much more prosperous than it was when they were alive, while Fred answered that the city itself was expanding, and more people moved in. They said that this version of Volzard was much better than when they were alive. Kakabun looked out the window and wondered if that would mean that the people in this city were now good at politics. Reinhardt replied that perhaps that was part of it, but also because the town has grown so large that there are now more non-adventurers living here. Kakabun did not know what to do. If this city is invaded by the villainous princess, it will be tragic. He had just arrived there, and he could already see that everyone was kind. But what if there really was a war that might happen there, and he'd have to fight against his classmates? Kakabun could not help but feel dejected at the thought. Reinhardt then tried to ease Kakabun's mind by saying that he knew that he was worried about his classmates, but things don't move that fast. Kakabun asked them if that was really true, so Reinhardt responded that no matter how much magic he could use, it would take him years to be able to fight, no matter how fast he trained, which made Kakabun all the more serious. After that, Kakabun ordered Fred to reconnoiter the kingdom of Riesenberg, to which Fred responded in kind, saying that he would depart through the shadows immediately. Next, he ordered Bastin to check on Volzard, and last was Reinhardt. He told him to stay behind and protect him, while he worked and see how things were going here. One morning, the third day after he started work, Reinhardt woke him up with his skeletal hand from the shadows, but he was not woken up by Reinhardt's pat, but because of the pain farming causes. Harvesting the liver farm is a very simple task, is what initially thought, but who is he kidding? It was freaking tough. After a day of labor, once he got back in his room, he would immediately plop down on the bed and would feel every pain in his body. Fortunately, he was able to self-heal. He felt much better after he healed himself. It was the only saving grace of his out of this hell of muscle pain. The next morning, Kakabun greeted Old Man Dino, who had hired him on this farm. Old Man Dino greeted back and complimented Kakabun that he was looking good today. Old Man Dino then said that it was because the harvest this time around was plenty that they needed Kakabun's help. Kakabun replied enthusiastically that he was getting the hang of it, so he could count on him anytime. Old Man Dino said that it was really encouraging to hear him say that. Just then his back reacted, hurting him. Kakabun then asked Dino if he was okay, and replied that he was going to be okay. However, Kakabun wanted to help, so he told Old Man Dino that he was an apprentice to a healer, and asked the old man to let him take a look at it for a moment. However, Dino refused in kind, saying that Kakabun was already busy, so he did not need to worry about that. But Kakabun insisted and asked Dino if it was around to where he was touching. Once they found the place where the back's bone was broken, Kakabun started to use his healing ability on Old Man Dino. As the process continues, Old Man Dino says that it feels so good that he might fall asleep. Kakabun then said that it might take a bit longer. Sooner or later, after Old Man Dino's back was healed, he started clapping saying that he felt nothing, then started running like nothing happened. Kakabun could not be more happy that his first treatment went well. Reinhardt, who was still with him, praised Kakabun, saying that it was to be expected from his master. He had exceptional skill. Kakabun then smiled and said that it worked this time, but he really didn't feel it at all. Reinhardt then responded that he was being modest again when he could easily be the best healer in the country. But Kakabun said that even if it was like that, there was still a lot for them to do. Reinhardt thought that Kakabun's first concern was to clear up the matter with his schoolmates, but the truth was it was to have the evil princess cry and squeal in her bed, saying his name as he pounced on her. This is juicy, guys. Kakabun could not help but blush at the thought. Then a week passed by in no time. He had been offered a week's extension, which he'd have to accept if he was getting paid. When he was in Japan, all he remembered was getting pissed off because he was too clumsy. He did not get along very well with his parents, making him wonder if he really had the desire to go home. Just then, he was greeted by Fred on the way. Seeing him, Kakabun thought that Fred found them, so he asked if he did. Fred then replied that he did find them, and they were still near the place where they were summoned. Kakabun then asked how they were being treated, so Fred reported what he saw. He said that they were not treated well, but also not worse. He continued that some are treated better than others, especially the saint. Hearing the term saint, Kakabun immediately knew that it was their class president. Fred continued that there are only a few light attribute users, so those who have a lot of magical power are even fewer. After that, the three were finally together. He then continued to ask. Kakabun asked if he had figured out what the evil princess wanted. Unfortunately, they still haven't. After that, he turned to Bastin and asked what the Lord of Volzard was like, so Bastin reported that he was quite an interesting character. Klaus Volzard is around 50 years old. His brother who was the Lord died, and he apparently became the Lord in his place. He seems to have been active as an adventurer, and he seemed to be familiar with the circumstances behind the city. Also, it seems like he does not want his people to be involved in any dark business. He's boldly transformed the city and seems to be very popular with the people, setting caps on interest rates for moneylenders and restrictions on the operation of gambling establishments. They are also providing aid to poor children and reaching out to poor neighborhoods. Hearing that report from Bastin, Kakabun that the Lord seems to be a pretty good guy. However, Bastin told his master to still be careful, because there was a feeling that it was a combination of the murky and the clean. Kakabun just hummed in response. As he walked down the road, he noticed two people walking ahead of him, and one of them was Karatsuda. Kakabun immediately approached them and greeted Karatsuda with a smile. Karatsuda greeted him back and said that he looked like he had a lot of time under the sun. Kakabun explained that he had been working on the farm for the past few weeks, so he was pretty burnt out. Hearing that made Karatsuda relieved that he was doing well. The person next to Karatsuda then introduced himself as Bert, saying that he had heard a lot about him from Karatsuda. Kakabun replied that it was nice to meet him. Kakabun then turned to Karatsuda and said that he wanted to come and thanked him for his hospitality. by treating him to lunch. However, Karatsuda humbly declined and emphasized that he was merely doing his duty. But Karatsuda then blushed as he added that if Kakabun really insisted, he wanted him to become a new customer in a familiar establishment. Not waiting for a response, Karatsuda led Kakabun the way. Kakabun apologized to Bert for bothering them, but Bert said not to worry about it, because it was a big help for him to be there. Bert reasoned that with the captain, it was a bit stuffy. Once they reached the inn, Karatsuda blushed again. The reason for it was because of the woman serving them. She was a seductive lady with a bigger and lovable heart than the previous girls. They were greeted by the lady specifically thanking Karatsuda for choosing them every time. On the other hand, Karatsuda, who was flustered, stuttered as he greeted Meline, asking her if the three of them could get in. Meline then led them to an empty table, and Karatsuda, who was still out of it, thanked her. Bert, who was witnessing this, could not help but shake his head and smirked like saying that it could not be helped. Kakabun also notices Karatsuda's behavior and immediately realizes that Karatsuda likes the girl. He described the captain as an open book and like a teenage boy in love. After that, Meline asked Karatsuda to introduce him to the little boy who was with them. He was referring to Kakabun. Karatsuda then explained that Kakabun had come to their city last week and was the only survivor of a caravan that was attacked by monsters in the demon forest. Meline reacted the same as everyone whenever they heard about Kakabun's backstory, which was actually just a made-up. She sympathized with him, and having experienced it 2 times already, Kakabun realized that it was about to go in that same pattern again. And just as he thought, Meline pressed him between her badzenkas, while also comforting him with words. Among the 3, Kakabun also noticed that it was the one that had the most softness. Seeing Kakabun having that all to himself, Karatsuda could not help but be envious. Kakabun could only silently beg for forgiveness from Karatsuda as he enjoyed that bliss. Later after that, Kakabun was woken up by the repentance of his name many times. As he got up from his desk, he was greeted by the stares of his classmates and the stern look on his teacher's face. The teacher began scolding him as if it happens all the time. The teacher was furious at him for falling in his class again. He noticed one of their classmates looking at him. It was Funyama. He was saying that he was amazed that Kakabun was able to sleep even though he couldn't study, and added that it was the reason why he was useless. Another one was Takeyama, who was also insulting Kakabun, who along with not studying, he's also not good in sports, calling him useless again. The next one was Yagi saying that Kakabun was one of those people that had no distinctive features, like shady characters, then ended with him also calling Kakabun useless. The other also said something along the line that their teacher does not need to mind Kakabun, and just finish the lesson, and that Kakabun was also abandoned by their teacher. The only one who looked at him with sympathy was the class president. However, his classmates could not care less and laugh at him, as Kakabun endured this humiliation. Fortunately, it was only a dream. Kakabun woke up immediately as if he was haunted in his sleep, making him sweat all over. Noticing the commotion, Reinhardt appeared through the shadows and asked his master if something happened. Kakabun then replied that nothing happened. Soon after that, he came to the far and bid them goodbye. Along with his thoughts, he was thinking that his old life was becoming a nightmare for him. He was really glad that he felt like he could be of some use in this world. After that, Kakabun went back to the guild and looked at the board to find some new job. Once he got closer, he noticed a white cat ear beyond the crowd. It was Mule. Mule looked at her back and saw Kakabun, who called her name. She was trying to remember him, so Kakabun introduced himself again, saying that he was Kento, the one that she suggested about the liver farm. Looking at Kokubun, she was amazed by Kakabun's growth and complimented him by saying that he looked strong. Just then, Jillik butted in and started shouting at Kakabun, asking him if he really thinks that he has gotten stronger because he still looks pathetic in his eyes. Mule tried to stop him from saying mean things like that, but it was too late because he already said it. However, Jillik does not care and adds that he is sure that Kakabun does not even know how to wield a weapon, and right on point, Kakabun certainly doesn't know how to swing a sword. The old receptionist who overheard them then suggested that if they were looking for a combat training course, he informed them that the guild is running one today. Kakabun, who heard, was excited to hear that there was a training course he could take. Kakabun immediately registered and took the course. But from Hillick's perspective, even if Kakabun accepted it, nothing would change, which earned him another scolding from his big sister he still ignored. After that, Reinhardt, who was always with Kakabun, offered that if it was just combat training, then they could help him. But Kakabun refused, reasoning that if he trained with them, his body wouldn't be able to take it. Kakabun then arrived inside a large room full of chairs, with just a small amount of people. Looking around, Kakabun noticed that it was kind of like a school classroom. Kakabun then sat on one of the chairs and was greeted by one of the people inside, asking him if he was an F rank too. It was a boy named Manon. Kakabun then introduced himself too and told him that he was an F rank and asked whether he was too. Manon responds with a confirmation and adds that it is a pleasure to meet him. Kakabun, meanwhile, internally comments about Manon's appearance, especially his light blue hair and stunning aura appearance, as he tries to put words together to say something. Is he really a boy? Something feels off, guys. Just then, a man who seemed important walked in and found everybody already seated there. He then stated his name is Donovan and also said that training starts today. It surprised the students, including Kakabun, because of the amount of energy and intensity Donovan brings. Then Donovan shares an important message with the group, stating that power does not come just from getting a weapon. Instead, he says that one is only as strong as the weapon one can use well. Strong words made Kakabun look amazed and frightened. Donovan then told the students that one's weapon may be powerful, but does not automatically make one powerful. He then asked them if they had such a sword, would they be able to say that they are stronger now? The students did not say anything but shook their heads to say that they weren't. He emphasized the fact that mastering one's weapon through intensive training and only using weapons one can control will be of much importance. The students seem to understand this, but are nervous about the teacher's seriousness. Then Donovan told them about the different weapons and their characteristics. His face is very scary, but his explanations are very detailed and easy to understand. After that, a lecture on monsters. The types of monsters, their characteristics, dangers, weaknesses, which ones can be sold as materials, etc. The lecture was based on Donovan's experience, so it was very convincing if from Kakabun's perspective. In the afternoon practical training, they were forced to drive a wooden sword endlessly. They were all exhausted and sweating. The strict teacher, Donovan, then told the class that he was going to be enrolling them for next week's class and wanted them to attend. Kakabun agrees but is dissatisfied, while others make excuses not to go. One was saying that they'll be going on an errand, and the other was already telling him to do his best. Later, Kakabun thinks about how strict Donovan is and realizes that even the most handsome guy, Minam, has apparently quit. This makes him feel shocked and alone. Just then, two hooligans got in Kakabun's way and demanded his bag of money. Kakabun protested that he had no money and displayed his concern over being in trouble. When Kakabun refused and asked if he said no, the ugly thug pulled out a knife and threatened him, implying he would not be safe unless he complied. Kakabun then can start saying in a relaxed manner that monsters sometimes appear there, and continued that he heard that skeletons appeared in the dark. The two cannot comprehend what Kakabun is saying. They can't even begin to think that there will be monsters inside the city walls. Suddenly, a big menacing skeletal monster appeared out of thin air with an uncanny aura around it that gave people uncomfortable chills. It was Reinhardt. While the two were afraid, Kakabun alone stood there like nothing was going on. Reinhardt was enough to make even grown men flee in panic. Kakabun then thanked Reinhardt for it. On the other hand, Reinhardt seriously said that they should have frightened them enough to make their souls come out of their mouths. Kakabun turned down the notion. He reasoned that if he went that far they might find out that he was a dark magician. So hearing that it was enough for his master, Reinhardt said that it was also enough for him. Inside Amanda's in his room, Kakabun lay down in his bed exhausted, while Reinhardt praised him for his hard work. Kakabun asked Reinhardt what he meant by that, so Reinhardt explained that he was amazed that Kakabun was not afraid to deal with them. Kakabun then said that the other person wasn't really serious, he was simply irritating him from the beginning, and he didn't feel desperate at all. Reinhardt then started stating in awe that it was as he expected from him. He was a calm person. The worst thing that he can do on the battlefield is to lose his composure. If he loses his composure, he'll make bad decisions that will only make things worse. Kakabun agreed as he comfortably lay flat on his bed, but he said that he was wondering if he would be able to move when the time came. Just then, Mesa came and opened the door saying that their dinner was ready. Kakabun immediately got up and thanked Mesa for informing him. He was almost caught talking with a skeleton. Unexpectedly, Kakabun received a painful gut punch from Mesa. It made him cough, almost making him vomit. He went down to the floor as he held his stomach, but Mesa could not care. It turned out it was to test out if he was now strong enough to handle that kind of punch. But since Kakabun did not, it meant that he still has a long way to go. Kakabun, who was still on the ground, complained to Mesa that she was mean, but he did not actually mean it. Mesa then reminded him out of concern that he was not strong enough. That's why if he went to the dungeon like this, he'd die. She explained that the one that came before him was even stronger than him, but never made it back from the dungeon. Kakabun, who finally got up and was heading to the dining hall, said that he already knew that, and that he won't go there, but Mesa did not believe him. Kakabun tried to defend himself by saying that there was nothing to be suspicious about. After that, once he arrived at the table, he was greeted by a freshly cooked dish, which looked delicious. Kakabun did not hesitate to dig in, and then Mesa suddenly snuffed him out to her mom, saying that Kakabun was trying to go to the dungeon. So she told her mom that they should stop him from going there. As Kakabun ate, he interrupted and said that he already told her that he wouldn't go, so there was nothing to worry about. Because of that, Amanda started scolding Kakabun as if he was also her child. Kakabun immediately said he really wouldn't go there. After all, it was impossible for him. The landlady then asked Kakabun if he was thinking of going to the demon forest again, but he stuttered answering that question with a no. He was lying that he wouldn't go there because it was such a scary place, so Amanda, who believed him, did not pry any longer and leave him alone. At night, however, Kakabun went to the demon forest. He was really sorry about it, but it was hard for him to swing a wooden sword in the neighborhood of the boarding house, so they came to the demon forest by using shadow travel. Looking at the vast area in front of him, Kakabun wondered why is there such a space inside the demon forest. Reinhardt laughed and explained that they had prepared that for him. It was a special training ground for their master. Kakabun was impressed that it was as big as a baseball stadium. With that said, Reinhardt told Kakabun that they were now going to start with his swinging practice. As the training progressed, a lot of groans from Kakabun could be heard. With the strict instruction from Reinhardt, Kakabun did not have the luxury to complain. He was desperate to become stronger, so he had no choice but to do this. After swinging practice, it was to hit the log. Every time Kakabun hurt himself, he used self-healing magic and continued the training. Ever since that day, while doing work at the farm potato warehouse that was a job from the guild in the morning, he started to train himself with Reinhardt at night. He would say that he got about 3 hours of sleep, but it was thanks to his self-healing magic that if he ate well, he could get rid of the pain and tiredness he was feeling. Inside the guild in the morning, Kakabun warmly greeted Jillik with a happy face, and Jillik, being a tsundere, could only respond with a grunt. However, when Kakabun tried to ask him where his sister was, his scowl became genuine, but still answered him saying that she was training her magic. Kakabun was amazed to hear that there was also a course for training magic in their guild, and Jillik replied that he should not forget that. Jillik being mean to him made Kakabun wonder if he'll have to take all of the courses in their guild if he doesn't want to die. As Kakabun thinks of that, Jillik leaves him and states that he will now go to his big sister, since he really has no intention of keeping him company. After that, Kakabun, who was curious about the magic training course, went there to see what it felt like. He followed Jillik and immediately saw Mule as well. Mule was channeling mana in her hands and was chanting. As she chanted using the wind magic, the mana swirls in her hand and glows spectacularly. Once it reached its final light form, Mule released her magic all at once, making her target fly in the air cut in half. After seeing that scene, Kakabun had his mouth agape in amazement, especially her brother who was even bragging about her to Kakabun, saying that he was certain that she would get to the next level. However, that impact of amazement only lasts a second for Kakabun. He was confused if it actually required that much chanting when using magic, so he asked Reinhardt about it. Reinhardt responded immediately, explaining that people indeed need to chant more when using powerful magic, but Kakabun was perplexed about it because if they chant that much, they'll be killed first before they even finish chanting. Reinhardt continued that it was the reason why a magician has to practice chanting on the move, and that is also why they also work alongside knights. To Reinhardt, it was actually Kakabun who was unusual to him, because he uses magic without chanting. Hearing that, Kakabun replied that he understood. Just as he finishes talking with Reinhardt, a sudden voice was heard from behind them, asking them what they were doing there. Turns out that it was actually Donovan. Donovan looked at Jillik with stern eyes, asking him if he was peeping again. However, Jillik quickly denied that that was not what he was doing. However, when Donovan looked at Kakabun, his gaze suddenly turned soft and asked him if he was there to observe. Kakabun answered that he said that he wanted to know what magic training was like. Hearing that, Donovan interpreted Kakabun's answer that he wanted to find ways to counter a magician's attack. Kakabun tried to deny that it was not like that, but it was futile. Donovan started rambling enthusiastically that Kakabun does not need to worry when fighting a magician. He said that Kakabun just needed to hit them before they finished chanting, and if he did that then, he win. However, if they finish chanting, he says that he just needs to anticipate their moves and evade them. Kakabun was amazed not by Donovan's advice, but by his being like a true muscle brain who solves everything only by using muscles. Suddenly, Donovan picked up Jillik with his clothes from his back like a true cat and told Jillik to practice with Kakabun a little. Jillik complained to Donovan because he did not want to do anything with Kakabun, but Donovan yelled at him and got scared so he didn't have much of a choice. Kakabun smiled awkwardly seeing Jillik scared for the first time, and seeing him smiling made Jillik irritated, so when Jillik confronted him about it, Kakabun looked away saying that he didn't even grin at all. Kakabun tried to explain to Donovan that he was really just there to watch the magic training and did not want to get involved in that. But when Donovan mentioned the backstory that Kakabun made up about him being the only survivor and explaining that it was the only way to prevent that, Kakabun could not help but sigh. His flawless backstory actually backfired on him. Once he was equipped, Kakabun looked at his gloved hands and got whiffed of the bad smell of the suit and armor. He thought that it was pretty similar to Kendo. If he knew that something like that would happen, he never would have called out to Jillik. Once they were ready, both of them stood in the training ground. Donovan started instructing them on the rules of their practice. He stated that Jillik can only aim for the places that Kento has armor on, while Kakabun can aim anywhere on Jillik. Hearing that, Jillik declared that Kakabun couldn't possibly hit him anywhere. After that, the match officially started with Kakabun politely bowing to Jillik. However, before they even exchanged blows, the people around them chatted with each other. The first two adults were wondering if Kakabun really survived the demon forest, because if he did then Jillik could be in trouble, while the other was complimenting Kakabun that he was looking pretty good with the sword in his hand, next to Mule who was staring blankly at Kakabun. With him hearing all that, Kakabun could feel the pressure of expectations for him. It was too much for him to handle. However, looking at Jillik who was challenging him with seriousness, Kakabun remembered his special training with Reinhardt every day, and he wanted to show that result to everyone present there. The first thing that was on his mind was to remain calm and watch the movements of his opponents, then aim for an opening. Kakabun tightly gripped his wooden sword and then attacked Jillik right on the front. Jillik looked at Kakabun with a troubled face, and just as Kakabun thought that he was going to land a hit, Jillik punched him right in his face and flung him on the side. Jillik's troubled face was actually from Kakabun looking ridiculous, and not because he was threatened, so Kakabun who had his nose bleeding was confused as to what happened. The two adults who were talking about Kakabun earlier immediately told them to get him to the infirmary, while Kakabun believed that the result was not supposed to be like that. Inside the infirmary, Kakabun felt something soft in his hand, so he wondered what it was. He felt comforted by the softness of this thing, but as he fondled it some more, he heard a response, almost like a moan-like sound, and immediately realized what was going on, so he opened his eyes to confirm, and just as he thought, he was actually feeling a bazunka, and it was from Mule's big and lovable heart. Kakabun immediately shrieked away and retracted his hand, and instead of receiving a negative reaction from Mule, she only teased him for being very healthy. Kakabun quickly apologized to her, and Mule replied that it was okay. Kakabun was confused that she was sharing a bed with Mule, making him wonder if he accidentally climbed the stairs to adulthood. However, before he could even imagine anything, Mule explained what actually happened. She said that she came to see him because he collapsed at the training ground, and when she saw him sleeping, she became sleepy too and fell asleep beside him. Typical cat behavior. Kakabun sounded disappointed, but quickly changed the subject to Jillik. Mule told Kakabun not to worry about Jillik, since it couldn't be helped when he was his opponent. Kakabun felt dejected about their match. After all, he did a special training. Mule, who was looking at him, told Kakabun not to push himself too much. Just then, Kakabun's stomach made a growling sound, so Mule, who heard that, told him that she was going to treat him as an apology for what Jillik did to him. Kakabun was embarrassed by the fact that Mule was treating him to a meal when he was the one who lost, But Mule told him not to be embarrassed about it and just enjoy the free meal treated by her. Suddenly, a handsome old man with a scar on his face approached Kakabun. He was asking Kakabun if he noticed that his face still looked good after taking such a shot on his face. Kakabun wondered who the man had just casually spoken to him like they knew each other, but still responded and explained that he had a body that heals when he slept. It was the fastest excuse that he could come up with on the spot. The man laughed out loud and said that Kakabun's ability to heal was nice. He could just get beaten up, get a night of sleep, eat well, and grow stronger. Then called out for the chef and told him to have Kakabun have his fill. However, Kakabun felt burdened by the sudden kindness when they just met each other for the first time, but Mule told him that it was alright. She explained that the person he was talking to was actually rich. Kakabun, who doesn't know about the handsome old man, thought that he was playing with Mule and was her sugar daddy. However, Mule stated that maybe because Kakabun was new in their town, he probably didn't know the man yet. Suddenly, the handsome old man welcomed him to the city of Volzard, adding a possessive pronoun to it. Kakabun then tried to process what the handsome old man when he said his city, and when he realized it, he started panicking. The handsome old man started introducing himself as Klaus Volzard, with Mule confirming as well that he was the Lord of Volzard. Kakabun stuttered as to say that it was nice to meet him while shaking his hand. Kakabun only heard him from one report that Baston told him, but he now can confirm that he was a pretty nice person. Klaus smiled at Kakabun and stated that he heard that Kakabun survived and escaped the demon forest, then added that those who have such good luck and talent are always welcome in his city. Kakabun tried to humble himself that he was just very lucky and nothing more. He explained that he was just a useless person who was judged by the crystal of the devil's eye. He continued that he was not someone special enough for him to care about. Klaus then called him a fool and told Kakabun to listen to him. He told Kakabun that there are people in this world who can't move forward without putting in huge efforts, but there is no one who will ever be good enough even after putting in huge efforts. Callus passionately scolded Kakabun that figuring out how to make himself grow and unlock his true potential is the job of those in charge of him. Kakabun, who was listening to him, was starting to feel something. Klaus continued that it may be true that Kakabun might not have any talent for magic, but he can feel so much latent talent still sleeping inside of him. To build that talent, he has to take on different kinds of work, make a lot of mistakes, and learn a ton from those mistakes. He emphasized that if he did, that then he would be able to shine brighter than others, so Klaus said that they will definitely find a way for Kakabun to shine. Kakabun, who never heard such words from others, could not help but be moved, his eyes teared, as his body trembled with his voice speaking up that he understood. He doesn't think he has ever had anyone acknowledge his existence in such a straightforward manner. He was always scolded by everyone, even by his classmates called him useless. The only thing he could do was cry about this. Even though Klaus knew that he did not get any readings from the crystal of the devil's eye, Klaus encouraged him to shine. But that stupid princess tried to dispose of him while keeping her hands clean. With that, he decided to let his classmates escape to Volzard. The next day, Kakabun decided to leave, so he told Fred to mark the place where he found his classmates. In the city of Lostak, where vast land of grass could be found and the beautiful houses beyond it, Kakabun and his 3 skeletal soldiers are traveling in the shadows. In Kakabun's opinion, it was really convenient. He was amazed that with Fred and the others as landmarks, they could move around in the blink of an eye with shadow travel. It was a truly cheat lever skill. Looking around the city, Kakabun noticed that unlike Volzard, it is a very laid-back city. Reinhardt then explained about the city as they traveled, after Kakabun asked Fred where are his classmates, and replied that they were on the outskirts of the town. Arriving at the outskirts of town, they saw a gate. It was surrounded by sturdy-looking walls, but they could easily sneak in by moving in the shadows. Inside the walls, Kakabun watched Funyama chant to create magic, and seeing him in a long time, Kakabun noticed that Funyama had lost some weight. Fred then explained why that happened. He told Kakabun that when his classmates didn't do well in training, they would be given very bad meals. After Funyama used his magic to harden the balls of mud, the soldier took a look at it and said that it was not hard enough, so he asked him if he actually wanted to be fed on demons. Kakabun, who was observing what was happening, asked Reinhardt why they were making clay dangos. Reinhardt explained that a knight's physical enhancement makes him much more powerful than an average man. He added that just throwing a mere rock is powerful enough to kill a man. Kakabun responded that he understood that the clays were rounded and uniform in size so that the knights could throw them easily. The knight then lifted Funyama by his collar like he weighed nothing and yelled at him for being stupid to not even do the things they want properly, and even insulted his weight for being a fatso. He told Funyama to choose between obedience and death, and afraid as he was, Funyama chose obedience. The knight tossed Funyama aside and told him to speak clearly because he couldn't hear him, then held his hair even as Funyama was looking uncomfortable. The knight repeated to choose between obedience and death, and this time Funyama shouted loud and clear that he would obey. As Kakabun and his 3 skeleton soldiers watch this cruelty, Reinhardt tells Kakabun that is how much everyone without magic power is treated. On the other hand, coming from the other side of the training ground, a handsome man was chanting a magic fire in his hands. Once he released the ball of fire, he hit his target and his firepower was immense. The lights sing him praise from the simple demonstration of that training. After that, a cute maid approached him with a towel calling him Yuusha, which basically means hero. This Yuusha guy then replied and thanked Shiria, the maid's name. This Yuusha guy then bragged that it was too easy for him, so there was really nothing to celebrate. Kakabun asked Reinhardt about him, so Reinhardt explained that he was called a hero because he had the highest magical power. After that, Kakabun asked about the woman beside the Yuusha guy. Reinhardt never failed to deliver. He explained that she was an exclusive maid for him, who takes care of all his needs and sleeps and eats together with him. Kakabun, who learned about that, felt jealous of the Yuusha guy who had a personal maid. Sharia, the maid, asked the Yusha guy if he was going to continue with his training, and the Yusha guy stated that he had to get stronger. He declared that he would not let anyone be sacrificed anymore, so he had to become stronger. Bro thinks he's Naruto. Kakabun was actually impressed by the line he would usually read in a shonen manga. After that, Fred informed his master that the saint was in the medical office. Hearing that, Kakabun remembered his class president and moved immediately. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga. Have a good day.